Hello and welcome. I'm Andrew Greif of the Oregonian, and you're listening to another edition of the Official Visit podcast, where I and Tyson Alger talk about Oregon Ducks things. Today is the last day of June, and it's a newsy day. Usually we've been trying to come up with topics to discuss on the podcast with football not quite here.
As everyone's probably noticed over our last couple of podcasts.
But we have stayed good about doing these once a week.
Yep.
Week 4, I think, for us. But today we actually have some news, and Tyson, why don't you take us into that? It's not even football related, it's basketball, but tell us what you know.
Okay, so the long-awaited waiver process for Oregon senior guard Dylan Ennis is finally done and over with, and the NCAA granted him a 6th year of eligibility, which is huge news for the Ducks. Ennis was a point guard from Villanova who transferred over before last season, was expected to be Oregon's number one point guard option throughout the season, and he hurt himself earlier in the season, and then he re-aggravated the injury in the first game of the Pac-12 season against Oregon State, and he essentially missed the entire season. And for a while it looked like that was going to be it for his career, because he had transferred from Rice to Villanova. Prior to that, he had already burned through his redshirt season, so he kind of looked SOL for a little bit, but they submitted their waiver request for an extra year, I believe, in April, and they officially got word this afternoon that the NCAA approved it, and so he will be back next season for the Ducks.
Oregon's compliance department might be as good as his basketball team because they got Chris Boucher back as well.
Yeah, no, that's 2 for 2 right now.
And you talked to Ennis. He called. What did he say? Kind of what was the tone of what he said?
Yeah, so Ennis has been back in Canada for, I believe, the last couple of weeks, just kind of taking a break before coming back here in Eugene. And I know this is something that's kind of been weighing on them for a long time because essentially his life's been in limbo. It's, do you go seek to go play professionally somewhere else or whatever. So he finally got that text. He was in his kitchen with his mom and dad. It was a group text between a compliance officer, Dana Altman, and assistant coach Mike Menenga. And basically, Ennis just screamed, and his parents kind of jumped, like, what the heck? And he told them the news, and they all had a big hug. And now Ennis is flying back to Eugene tomorrow, actually today, if you're listening to this on Friday, to kind of get back into his physical therapy to get that foot back.
Did you ever figure out what quite it was that took so long that screwed him up twice? Was it the same injury each time?
Yeah, so what happened is he hurt it kind of in camp.
Yeah.
And then he kind of rushed back, and then he went up for a layup, or it was either a layup or a dunk against Oregon State, and he kind of fell on it weird. And never at one point did he think this is broken. It was just kind of like a nagging, lingering foot injury. And so he had mentioned it to a trainer, and they were like, okay, well, let's check this out. And then they went and got x-rays, and he had a broken foot. And as we saw with Jordan Bell last year, who broke his foot in April and wasn't able to come back until about midway through the season, foot injuries can definitely linger. They potentially, they maybe could have rushed him back for the NCAA tournament. Well, granted, probably not. He was still in the boot, but they took the long play with this, and it looks like it's going to work out because he said that he expects to be completely healthy by the end of July here, and then hopefully we'll be able to go on the trip with the team to Spain in August.
So Oregon's guard rotation next year is going to be really interesting. Yeah, Casey Benson, not necessarily, he did admirably last year, but I think he might fit in more of a backup, like a first guy off the bench in this role. Then you've got Peyton Pritchard, the all-everything recruit, decommitted from Oklahoma. Obviously, he's liked across the nation, not just Oregon. He's the Westland kid. He's coming in. You got Tyler Dorsey back, who was, really good as a freshman, not, freshman All-America good, but he was, I thought, very
he's got a lot of potential, too.
Yeah, and now he has NCAA tournament experience. Am I missing somebody else? Ennis?
Yeah, we're missing... oh my God, why am I blanking on this?
Dylan Brooks can play the point if he wants to. He's not necessarily a true point, obviously.
There's one other freshman guard from last year. I'm feeling like an idiot because I covered the team and I'm forgetting his name.
Kendall
Small, who honestly didn't play a whole lot last year. Actually, let's go back to Casey Benson because this is kind of probably the person that is most affected by Ennis coming back. Casey Benson did exactly what the team asked him to do last season. He didn't score a whole lot. But he never turned the ball over. I think he had the best assist-to-turnover ratio in the country, and he honestly didn't have a ton of assists, so it just means that he had hardly any turnovers. And he did a really good job. Oregon has a lot of playmakers, so basically his job was to not screw this up. The thing where Ennis comes in, though, is Ennis can create his own shot. He can get to the rim. It's just kind of another weapon, whereas, Benson was kind of a facilitator, which worked perfectly throughout Pac-12 play in the first couple of rounds of the NCAA tournament. But when you were watching them play Oklahoma, a team that had weapons across the board, it would have just helped a ton to have the primary ball handler have the ability to score, right. Kind of like the other players on the floor.
Well, it's going to be really interesting to watch Oregon next year, because I think the book on Oregon has always been, even if they start slowly, by late January into March, they are among the very best in the whole country in terms of finishing out a season. I think Dana Altman in February is, the secret's out. He's terrific. He coaches teams terrifically down the stretch. So this year, obviously, the expectations are going to be much higher from the jump, from November. Mm-hmm. And how do they handle that? And I heard Ennis in his story say that just because we have all this talent back, we've been told by Altman that we shouldn't just expect to automatically raise our game. Elite 8 last year doesn't necessarily mean that we're a shoo-in for a Final Four now or a title game. I thought that was a nice self-awareness that there is still a lot of moving pieces. Arizona lost a big piece today when their 5-star
right.
recruits left. But still, the road is going to be rocky at times for Oregon. I think that's nice that they're already thinking that way, that it's not just going to be smooth sailing.
Right. And they think that way, but if you're just projecting things based on paper, and paper never really works out, I think it's safe to say Oregon's a preseason top 5 team next year. Sure. I thought they were, without Ennis, I thought they were easily a top 10 team, maybe a borderline number 5 or so, especially with that Cavell Bigby Williams kid coming in, who's going to slide right into the Oregon's twin towers of Chris Boucher and Jordan Bell. And now you just have an experienced point guard coming in there. But if anyone knows how quickly things can turn on you, it's Ennis. So right. They definitely know they have to put in the work there.
Don't forget about the Roman Sorkin factor.
The Roman Sorkin factor.
Do you want to talk some football?
Sure.
So I'm just going to ask you more questions because you did more heavy lifting on football. I'm doing a lot of Olympic trials coverage this week. So I'm talking.
Which you can find at OregonLive.com/sports/track and field. Is it the N or is it and?
It's and,
okay.
not the ampersand.
Yeah.
So I've been talking to a lot of Oregon Ducks track people like Devin Allen,
mm-hmm.
who I think has a really interesting decision coming up. I think we've talked about that several times before, but there are going to be a ton of Ducks at the trials, and I think on one count I saw maybe 20. But you did some really interesting reporting on Dakota Prukop and talking to people who had arranged defenses to try to contain him in Big Sky conferences while he was at Montana State. And you have some really interesting insight. The story isn't out yet, but I thought we could at least tease it and just kind of give people an idea of what the general consensus is, maybe.
Right. So I talked to 3 coaches at the FCS level. I talked to Bruce Barnum, the head coach of Portland State. I talked to
Reach your computer.
Got an email there. I talked to University of Montana's defensive coordinator, and I talked to Southern Utah's head coach. Each one of these guys were prominent in their game plan for Prukop, and Montana State lost all 3 of those games. In 2 of them, against Montana and Southern Utah, Prukop didn't play well. Well, for Prukop level, didn't play well, which means he still rushed for close to 100 yards. He still threw a couple touchdowns. But they were able to just limit him in certain situations. And essentially, that's kind of the rub that I got from these coaches was it's almost, especially at that level where you don't quite have the athletes to completely, when you have dual threat quarterback, you kind of need to have a very athletic second level there or fast defensive ends, or else they're going to be able to get through there. So basically, they had the game plan to just limit him in crucial situations while knowing that he was going to blow you up at times. And I thought Southern Utah's strategy was relatively interesting because basically their whole game plan for Prukop was, okay, we know he's going to beat us with something. We got to take away one thing. So basically, their whole strategy was we want to get him towards the sidelines because we want to limit where he can do his damage from. And so basically they flush him out of the pocket, keep him to the sidelines, and either throw in everybody on the rush or just drop everyone back in coverage. But where they were saying that Prukop differs to Vernon Adams is when Vernon Adams would get out of the pocket, nobody was concerned about him. And granted, he would do this from time to time, but no one was concerned about him being I'm going to take off and run it for a 60-yard touchdown there. They said what makes Prukop special is when he gets out of the pocket, unlike a lot of running quarterbacks, he still keeps his eyes downfield. So, a lot of those touchdowns we saw from Vernon Adams to Darian Carrington, where he's out of the pocket for what seems like an hour and then finds Carrington downfield, they were saying that Prukop can do that.
Right.
But unlike Adams, Prukop is also a threat to just take off and run it for 60 yards too. So it's basically we're saying at that level you had to gamble a lot with Prukop to be able to limit him there.
Yeah, they certainly don't have the defensive depth at the FC's level like you'll have at the schools. What?
Oh, just one thing I appreciated talking to Bruce Barnum. I was asking that question. And I was trying to kind of massage my way into it by saying, hey, at the higher levels they don't, they probably have a couple more better athletes. And he's like, Tyson, you don't have to sugarcoat it. There are a lot better players like up at that level. I was like, okay, thanks, Bruce. Okay, at the Pac-12 where you got much better play.
Well, read the story whenever it comes out for Bruce Barnum's expanded thoughts on him because they're hilarious. I've seen some of the quotes.
It's essentially kind of the biggest concern that they had about Prukop at the higher level is just him staying healthy.
Because he runs recklessly?
Yes. Not yet. It wouldn't be considered recklessly if he was a running back or a wide receiver or a tight end. But one of the quotes from Barnum is just basically saying, Vernon Adams is more likely to run to the sidelines, take a selfie with the guy that he's about to juke as he goes out of bounds, whereas Prukop, what was the correct wording, is like a rabid Wolverine and just bowling through guys on the sidelines. So he said Prukop's definitely more of like the blue-collar working-class guy where he said his description was for Vernon Adams was he was the magic man.
I see. Okay. Well, I'm looking forward to that one.
Yeah.
I met with former Oregon quarterback yesterday, Joey Harrington.
Oh.
You can watch the video on the Oregonians Facebook page. I hosted a Q&A session basically with Oregonian employees. He just came in and wanted to talk, and so we had this speaker series. And it was really interesting. It lasted 50 minutes. If you want to watch it all, again, it's on the Oregonians Facebook page. And he talked about how we don't have the audio, but again, I would say go watch it there. But some of the things, just to paraphrase, he was talking about his relationship with Nick Saban when he played for him in Miami, and that he really appreciated Saban's just straight up mentality of, look, we traded a first-round pick for Dante Culpepper, a second-round pick for you, but if you play better, you'll beat him, you'll play. Mm-hmm. And if he plays better, then he'll play. Right. And Harrington was like, I needed that so badly because I was so broken by his experience in Detroit. He had some interesting stuff about he has two sons, 7 and 4, and he's really nervous, he said, petrified to have the football discussion with them because he doesn't know what he wants to do in terms of having them play. Mm-hmm. He's just really scared about it because he said that he has lots of teammates who are not quite 40 yet, who are in really bad shape, injury-wise, or head trauma or physical trauma, beneath the neck, and that was interesting. I think you hear that more and more of former players saying, "I don't know if I would let my child do that," but that's his dad was a coach for Central Catholic for a number of years, and so he comes from a football family. So to hear that, I thought it's pretty interesting.
What do you think it is about? You see Joey so involved in this community, and he's had a bunch of different kind of various jobs or positions throughout the years. What is it about him you think that, why was he here yesterday? It seems that he's very much wants to be a visible part of this community.
Yeah.
Do you get any sense of kind of what makes him tick in that regard?
I think that, he didn't want to go into coaching because he wanted to be around his family. And he just didn't want to be working 100-hour weeks and seeing his kids for, while they were awake, maybe 1 hour a day. Mm-hmm. He had said that in a previous interview with the Oregonian's Mike Taquito wrote a couple years ago. And so that's why he's gone after these jobs like KGW TV, where he reports 1 day a week, or he did some local radio that didn't really keep going, but he did that for a while because he wants to stay local. He said he was born in Northeast Portland, and he's going to die in Northeast Portland. But in terms of yesterday, why he came in, I think he was just invited, but it was a chance for him to talk about his family foundation.
Right.
They've been giving a lot of stuff away.
Is it the Harrington Family Fund? Or
Harrington Family Foundation.
Okay.
And he made a good point that they were just in their early years giving away money that they would get to organizations they liked until people were like, hey, nothing against you guys, but if I like the Red Cross, for example, why don't I just give my money to them directly?
Right.
And so what they've been doing is actually kind of interesting, where it's like the scholarship thing, where like they'll give it to a person in the community. It doesn't have to be an athlete. And they'll say, hey, are you interested in product design, for example? Because Tinker Hatfield of Nike is on our board, and we could go to lunch one day and talk about that.
Right.
Maybe he's got an internship. Maybe he's just got advice. They have all kind of different people around the state in different in roles who he thinks they can be like offer kind of that value to someone. Like, we can not only give you some money for your studies, but we can also maybe hook you up and network you a little bit. So that was interesting. I think the most, if there was ever a headline to come out of it, it would be, I months ago, actually years ago now, heard rumblings that in the 1997 Las Vegas Bowl, when Oregon played Air Force, total Oregon blowout. Pat Johnson had a huge game for the Ducks. And I had heard over the years that because it was such a blowout, Phil Knight had been given the authority to call a number of plays in the fourth quarter because the game was no doubt in person. And Harrington said, I cannot confirm nor deny that because I don't have the exact information, but I've heard those exact same things, and who knows?
I love that story. That's my favorite.
So that was interesting.
One last segue here. We'll keep this podcast short. SB Nation put out their bowl projections yesterday, which is entirely too early, but that's essentially what it is these days. It's slow in the summer. And they have the Ducks coming in as the Pac-12's number 5 seed, going to El Paso for the Sun Bowl. Thoughts? I don't disagree with their logic that Oregon could finish 5th. I think I think Oregon could finish anywhere between 5 and up.
Yeah.
Maybe. Yeah.
I think that's fair. I think that's completely within the realm of possibility.
Right. Could be better. Could be. I don't think they'll be worse than 5th. But
I would be shocked if they were worse than 5th. I'd be shocked if they were 5th. But
right.
I think they're going to be a good team.
I think you're probably looking in like the 2 to 3 window.
I think so too.
Right.
If everything breaks right, this team has absolutely the pieces for a title. I think that's.
Yeah.
They haven't lost.
Pac-12 title.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Pac-12 title. But I'm really fascinated to see if the hype about Washington checks out. We'll see that in October when they come to Autzen Stadium. But I think that for so long we've been hearing the same discussion, and it'd be fun to get a rivalry back. I think that it's better when two teams are playing well instead of Oregon's. What is this now? 12 years in a row.
I believe so.
So. And they had Washington SB Nation going to the Rose Bowl.
Yeah.
By the way.
And I'm guessing after you've been on this will be your 4th season on this beat. I'm guessing you have no desire to go back to San Antonio for a 3rd year. Although, you and I did have some very good times eating on the Riverwalk there.
Yeah, if they go back 3rd time, all we're doing is eating at Boudreaux's on the Riverwalk.
That was the best food I've ever had.
If you went there, if you were a Duck fan, listen, you went to the Alamo Bowl and you ate at Boudreaux's, good for you. That was time well spent. This was time well spent.
Yeah, I was about to say, man, you're just a step ahead of me.
Well, this is now our 3rd season on the beat, so
okay.
We filled each other out.
Okay, we finished each other's sandwiches.
You can follow that guy at Twitter on at Tyson Alger.
Bingo.
You can follow me at Andrew Greif. As always, rate us on iTunes if you feel so inclined. We'll be back next week with maybe some hot track talk.
Ooh.
And definitely some...
I like that hot track talk.
And definitely some more football, because guess what? We're only 2 weeks away from Pac-12 football media days.
Oh, my goodness.
Thanks for listening.
Bye.